Cindy from the Metabolic Studio in West Covina. I'm still working on the lost embroidery, but I do have a new one that I will start hopefully tonight. And who hasn't gone? I'll pass it on to Roxanne.
Hi, I'm working on my last one. Roxanne is she, her in my name, and I'm still working on my horseweed. This is, yeah. Who hasn't gone? I'll pass it to Lauren.
Ready to connect another device.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I use she, her pronouns, and I am working, I'm going to start the bumblebee. I will pass it on to, has Emily gone yet?
I haven't. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Emily here in Echo Park, Los Angeles. I use she, her, and right now I'm working on a blueberry banana cobbler, actually. So that's my project for this session.
Oh my gosh.
It's very exciting. It's very exciting. Glad to be with you all, and I would like to just take a moment and say thank you for devoting time and energy and understanding to our fires of the West here. This has been a really intense fire season, and my hometown is one of the ones that burned in Southern Oregon. And so I'm just so appreciative of holding the space to acknowledge fires and the impact that they have. And I feel called to action to learn more about what I can do. And I'm just happy to be with you all. So thank you. And let me pass it on to Sylvia. How about Sylvia?
Thank you, Emily. I'm Sylvia Holmes. I'm in Pasadena, California, and I got a new embroidery for this session. It's a mule fat plant. So that's what I'll be working on. Thank you. I'll pass it to Philip if he hasn't gone.
Hi, I'm Phil. You can call me Phil. He, him pronouns, and I'm in packing mode. Gonna be heading out camping soon, so just scrambling. And yeah, looking forward to this reading. So thank you. I'm on my phone. It's hard to scroll around here. Not sure. Lexa, have you gone?
Hi, this is Lexa. This is Teddy. And I'm in Pennsylvania, she, he. And hello to the Norrises in Highland, in Lincoln Heights. Sorry to hear about your house, Meg.
Well, that is a perfect transition. Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves, and for anyone who didn't get the chance, please feel free to do so in the chat bar. You can say your name, your pronouns, and if you feel comfortable where you're calling in from, as well as what you're going to be working on. And I'm going to go ahead and do the introduction for tonight. And yeah, I just want to say I'm like super grateful to be, here with y'all tonight. It was a hard transition after we finished our abolitionist reading group, and I just missed you all. So it's really good to be back and have this community again.
It's great to see everyone.
Friday night, I got dressed up. Okay, so welcome to the Fires of the West Learning and Native Plant Embroidery Zoom gathering hosted by the Metabolic Studio. Since the last presidential election, Lauren Bond and the Metabolic Studio have held a potluck, protest, printmaking workshop, and community crafting space every Thursday to process collectively the various traumas of this time. With the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, however, we have obviously shifted gears and created this Zoom space to educate ourselves on critical issues by reading and holding discussions while we craft. We spent the first 12 weeks of this Zoom gathering focused on texts about prison and police abolition, and this current series is dedicated to educating ourselves about the fires of the West with a specific focus on native land management and sovereignty, the history of fire suppression, and how we can decolonize our understanding of fire moving forward to create a safer and more resilient West. Many of you who are here have already received embroidery kits in the mail. In the kit is a line drawing on fabric of a botanical plant representing the food and medicine that Metabolic is currently growing on two studio sites along the LA River, as well as up in Payahunadu, so-called Owens Valley, where Los Angeles steals its water, and in Vermont as an effort to give away free food to folks in need right now. We drew images of the plants we're growing, transferred the drawings onto fabric, which we sent out to our community, along with an embroidery hoop, needles, and thread. In the kit, you will also receive a self-addressed return envelope with postage. So when you finish the embroidery, you can ship this back to Metabolic Studio when these embroideries will eventually be formed into a hybrid object. And if you have not yet received an embroidery kit, please put your name in the chat now, and our team member Jen will be in touch with you. So tonight we're going to be watching KCET's video entitled Tending the Wild, Cultural Burning, which is 18 minutes. And then we're going to be reading Manola Sequeira's 2019 article, Indigenous Fire Practices Once Shaped the Northwest, and They Might Again, published on Crosscut. There are no content warnings for this evening other than obviously just heavy discussion, but there's no direct content warnings. And we're going to screen share the Tending the Wild KCET video. So there's kind of an issue with Zoom that when everyone has their videos on, the screen share option gets really glitchy. So while we watch the video, we're going to ask if everyone is able to turn their screen or their video off. And then when we do the reading, we can turn the screens back on. And also for folks who are new tonight, we read these texts out together. So if anyone wants to read out loud with us, this is available. It's an article. I'll put it in the chat. And please feel free to read out loud with us. So I'm going to click on this video and I'm going to screen share.
Did you do it with sound? I don't really know how it works.
Let me know when I play this if y'all can hear the sound.
Yes.
Can you hear the sound?
You have to know how to work with fire. When you're my age, I take my young ones out. Smell the smoke. Smell it. That's grass fire. Smell the smoke. That's a house burning. Smell the smoke. That's tires burning. That's a wood fireplace burning. You should be able to smell every single different kind of smoke. The animals teach their young to do that. But if there's no fire, they can't teach them to do that. That's why we have to burn. That's why we have to keep the fires going. So that all parts of life understand what it is that we're doing with fire. The North Fork Mono and most of the other Mono groups have been here for 15,000 years. When the Indian was out on the land, they always burned. So the use of fire comes through your land so that it can take care of your resources and give you new ones. Cultural burning is exactly that. So when we burn, we are burning to perfect this resource to supply resources for our culture, rather it be food, medicine, fiber, sticks, basketry material.
Didn't you guys just burn it?
It's been a few years. We've burned like, I don't know, 50 yards in all directions. And so this was part of like a little plot we had burned here.
So these are new shoots right here coming up. It's good to see this. We'll have the berries to eat if you eat them.
Sorry, I didn't realize if I mute myself, y'all can't hear the sound. I'm gonna go back 10 seconds.
Years. We've applied fire here a couple of times. This is the Mariposa gray leaf manzanita. This is a medicine, both food and medicine. The berry could be, once it's fermented, a really good drink for your stomach. One of the things that we've done here is we burned underneath this and pruned this bush up, trimmed it up so that, one, it will have these nice big bunches of berries. And then on the stalk here, the bark is peeling. This bark is used for poison oak. When you're burning, you try to get the wind to go in the direction of the resource that you want to apply smoke to. Smoke helps the leaves and the berries to become a better product. Consequently, there's been new growth. That's all a part of the end result of applying fire and smoke to the resource. We were burning an area that hadn't been burned for well over 100, 120 years. And when we did burn, these bushes that we're standing in the middle of that are basically 3 foot tall were about 5 or 6 feet tall, and so thick you could not walk through them. So dry that lichen and California dodder, which is a parasite, was beginning to crawl all over them and kill them. So it needed fire. This land needed fire. You need to be able to see through the trees. The concept that we are bringing forth when we work out on the land is this open concept. We've got to be able to see through. When the baby is inside of the basket, look through the basket. See the world. See through the basket to the outer world. See through the forest. See through from this world to the next world. Always the ability to see through.
Fire keeps the ground clean. Fire keeps our environment clean. Fire is to keep the plants healthy, that they keep growing more materials for us to use. It's a win-win situation for the plant and for us. Every plant is affected by fire. We as basket weavers, we are totally dependent upon the land for all of our materials because we can't go down to Michael's and buy all of our basket materials. And we need a full year, full cycle to gather our materials. This plant is struggling, but if it could get burned and burned back, it would have a whole bunch of new, just really straight shoots come out the top. But you can see how long of a piece that we need. One good thing, if we could have a fire, it brings the springs back. The water level comes up. So the springs hold more water.
Fire is always about water. Why are these still green? These are beautiful. We haven't seen water for a month. Because they're holding water in their root system. Why does the water still in the river? creek down here? Because all these plants are still holding water and letting the water go gently down into the creek. When you open this up, snow, rain is able to get to the root system. And then the root system retains water. What we have done here by opening up this forest and this little ecosystem is we've returned the water.
Native communities in California in the past have used fire for a whole variety of purposes, including increasing the fruit production of plants, burning plants in order to encourage a certain sort of plant growth.
I think a really critical part of the way that it was done here in California is that when they did small burns, what would happen is you would get grasslands and berries and other plants that would come back. And typically studies that have been done suggest that the diversity and the density of the foods that are from those plants really increases in that year or two after a burn.
This idea that you have a moderate level of disturbance, that's when you have the highest levels of diversity and richness in an environment.
By doing something like here, like a cultural burn, we're hoping and looking forward to obviously, the straighter shoots and everything, but better berry production, the next season. So, we're all kind of curious and excited to see the fruits of our labor, come next season and see where we're at with this. So before we burned, when all this was still pretty overgrown and everything, I don't think any of us had noticed that any of this was actually growing here. So after it burned and everything, it was probably just kind of choked out by a big mass of sourberry that was here.
Today at the cultural burn site, the community fire crew was able to do a little bit of preparation for a burn in a few months, reducing the risk that when we light that burn, the fire will escape very quickly. So usually one of the top priority objectives of a prescribed burn would be to clear out the shrubs and trees that are representing fuel that a wildfire could come in and burn. It usually has a creeping fire where the fire creeps along the ground and under the trees and even some of the shrubs without burning them to a crisp. Fire is really a lot like electricity. Electricity is a dangerous thing. You can get a severe shock from electricity and it can kill people, but it can also be put to wonderful uses. And fire, when used in a sophisticated manner, is very much the same way. Fire can course through the forest like electrons through a wire and energize those circuits that the forest has. It can turn on the meadows and encourage them to bloom at the right time of the year.
Fire is a spirit. This land has spirits. And when we're burning, they come alive. And those spirits, they still hear. That's why we do sing to them. That's why we do talk to them. You have to understand fire. You have to respect fire. You can't be afraid of it. If you're afraid of fire, you won't understand fire.
The Spaniards wanted to suppress fire because they saw it as dangerous and did not necessarily understand what purposes people were putting the fire to. They saw it as a careless application of fire by what many of them referred to as, quote, primitive people, unquote. So fire suppression is very much tied up with social and political oppression of Native American people. It might sound like a good thing to have a lot of trees. That's what the Forest Service thought. And they wanted to maximize the number of trees per acre. But what they were doing was changing the landscape, getting lots of little thin trees in between the bigger trees and the wide spacings that had been maintained for thousands of years by indigenous fires. By suppressing fire and keeping people from lighting cultural burns, you built up the fuel over time. And that's what has led to a situation today where the forest is full of trees, but really closely packed and ready for that spark and for a huge wildfire to start at any time.
We continue to follow breaking news out of the Santa Clarita area, where 200 firefighters are battling a fast-moving brush fire along northbound Highway 14 near Sand Canyon. It's quickly burning, currently at 2,500 acres with 0% containment.
A devastating blaze tearing through Southern California overnight. Moving fast, tripling in size, and engulfing more than 18,000 acres of land. More than 82,000 residents have evacuated as air tankers work tirelessly to douse the flames. The Blue Cut fire started Tuesday, just 60 miles east of Los Angeles, closing down a major interstate and roadways as it grew. The governor of California declaring a state of emergency.
Fire is going to be on the land, whether we like it or not. We can either choose when and where and how we prepare for it and how to deal with it, or continue on fire suppression and hope really that it don't come back, but it eventually will. And the problem is it becomes these high-intensity super fires that cause nothing but damage. There's no benefit to it. I'm doing some shell sorting, the heavy fractions from flotation that we took in our tribal's traditional territory, finding even some fragments of fire-cracked rock, and getting a good number of all this for its relevance in our land tending uses in our territory. With cultural burns, you not only are removing those fuel loads that create those super fires, but you're healing the earth. When you wait for those big super fires or those wildfires, they destroy the soil, they bake the soil, it sterilizes it, kills a lot of the fire-dependent and non-fire-dependent seeds in the seed bank. It gets to a level of intensity where people can't stop it or suppress it anymore. Having prescribed burns, cultural burns, is something that we all realize, at least with experience on the land, that is something that needs to be done.
I've heard some forests describe this as an ecological disaster on the scale of Hurricane Katrina. Tree mortality is a huge problem in the Sierra right now. There are millions of dead pine trees, even without thinking about whether there's a hugely elevated fire risk because of these brown and dried needles. It's a different forest from now on than it was, a couple years ago or 10 or 20 years ago. Even if you view this as a catastrophe or a disaster, it can also be viewed as an opportunity for the Forest Service to collaborate with tribes like Gold Springs Rancheria of Mono Indians to really talk together and collaborate and design those fires and those burn plans in such a way that you can meet the objectives that a tribe might have for caring for its cultural resources, while at the same time linking together many, many cultural burns to build a whole area of reduced fire risk, because you are reducing the amount of fuel in the area at the same time. So the Forest Service came in about a month and a half ago and conducted this burn, and did give some notice to the tribe that they were going to conduct the burn to improve the health of the oaks and increase acorn production. Definitely affected the trees. It looks like they're greening up and coming back. The future of fire really depends on more collaboration between American Indian tribes and other agencies who have an interest in and a stake in fire, and how to use it, and how to minimize its destructive risks and maximize its creative potential.
You have a brand new house and nobody lives in it and nobody cares for it. In a matter of a couple of years, it will begin to fall apart. It needs to have somebody living in it. And this land has to have somebody living in it. When you live in the mountains, when that's been your home, you know when your home is dirty. You know when your home needs to be clean. You know when things are not right. And so by not having fire on the land, not only Native Americans, ranchers, people who use the mountains, people who understand the forest, they'll all tell you the same thing. Our forest is trashy. You cannot leave it like that. You have to have fire in order to have rejuvenation.
Awesome. Y'all can all turn your screens back on for folks who want to. We encourage, if you want to visually see each other. Next, we're going to be reading Indigenous Fire Practices Once Shaped the Northwest, and They Might Again, which I'm going to put in the chat, is an article that's, the reason I chose it for the first reading tonight is that it's an interview with 4 different experts, 4 different Native experts. And so we'll be reading kind of their words. And I can tell you, it's Cody Desitel, Natural Resource Director of the Colville Tribes, Emily Washinas, CEO of Native Friends and adjunct faculty member at Yakima Valley College, Ernesto Alvarado, Research Associate Professor of Wildland Fire Sciences in Seattle, Steve Rigdon, former Yakima Tribe firefighter and General Manager of Yakima Forest Productions. So I just thought this would be a great place to start because we're going to be hearing interview-based kind of perspectives. So if anyone would like to read with us, feel free to unmute yourself now or put it in the chat. And basically how we do this for folks, if this is your first night, what we do is we just read until one of us gets tired, and then you can pass it to the next person. So like I'll read until I don't want to, and then I'll pass it to Ryan, and then he'll pass it to whoever else wants to read, and then so on and so forth. And then it'll get turned back to me most likely. And this isn't a super long article, and then we'll hold space for discussion afterwards. Yay, would love to have you, Joan. So, Ryan, do you want to start?
Sure. All right. Indigenous fire practices once shaped the Northwest, and they might again. For centuries, settlers suppressed the native burning and wildfires that enriched and protected Western ecosystems. 4 experts explain why we need it back.
And sorry to jump in. This was published in 2019. Ooh.
Weird. Our fire, ironically, our fire alarm is going off and we don't know why.
We're not cooking. Okay. Should we go check downstairs? That is weird. Okay, well, we live on top of a gallery that's empty, so that's why I'm like concerned.
Yeah, that's weird.
Well, we're probably fine, hopefully. So Sherry, that would be great too. Thank you. So I'll pass it to, or Ryan will pass it to Joan. Joan can pass it to Sherry. Sherry, you can pass it to me when you're done. All right, so this was published in 2019, which is what I was wanting to say.
All right, second try. All right. Upon arriving in Washington, many settlers assumed that the lands they had entered were perfect representation of unspoiled nature. They had explored clearings and meadows that fostered a bounty of plant and animals, and animal life richer than any land they had seen before. The idea of, quote, perfect paradise, end quote, is one that's persisted about the Americas for decades since, leading one Smithsonian botanist in a 1991 book to call a part of the New World, quote, a world of barely perceptible human disturbance. This perception is a myth. The indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest shaped their lands with many intentional practices long before settlers came to the continent. One of the most important was controlled burning, which cleared areas of crowded trees, undergrowth, and pests, making space for new growth and wildlife. But European settlers and disease upended native populations and culture, stifling these practices. For hundreds of years after, fire suppression became the favored means of management, which brought back woods dense with fuels and higher wildfire risks. That's changing. Research from more recent decades has realized the merit of controlled burning. Some tribes in Northern California have recently partnered with the Forest Service to implement native approaches to controlled burns. Others, like the Fort Apache in Arizona, were able to bring back the practice of controlled burns as a means of fuel reduction even earlier. Here in Washington, some tribes have continued their usage of indigenous land management practices by conducting controlled burns on a local scale. Crosscut Spoke, which is the magazine that we're reading from. Crosscut spoke from a group of researchers, land managers, policymakers, and firefighters who make indigenous wildfire management in Washington a part of their daily lives. We asked them to share more about its importance, how it can both preserve indigenous culture and offer solutions in the West under a changing climate. Where did your personal connection to fire start? How do you say his name?
Cody Desitel.
Cody Desitel, Natural Resource Director of the Colville Tribes, Colville Reservation. He says, I've been fighting fires since 1995. When I was young, it was very common to do a lot of burning in the spring on the Colville Reservation. That was just something you did, and lots of people did it around the community. It wasn't anything that was official. It was just people in the community that had just grown up that way. It was a common practice to go out and, if there were dead grass and brush, burn it because it reduced fire risk. You usually got a good green up afterwards, which was good for deer and elk and horses and cattle and whatever else you had there. And it reduces your fuel risk later in the summer. There was obviously less people around 20 years ago, so you have less risk of impacting your neighbor or burning down a structure. We hadn't had any huge fires like we saw in 2015, so smoke in the air was something that was still kind of accepted and not necessarily recognized as a bad thing. End of the quote. Emily Washings, the CEO of Native Friends and adjunct faculty member of Yakima Valley College in Yakima Valley. She says, I'm a Yakima tribe member. I am an adjunct faculty at Yakima Valley College, and I also run a blog called Native Friends. I grew up in the Yakima Reservation. My dad was a firefighter and continues to work in forestry today. I have very early memories of just seeing his different fire gear at different hours, whether he was coming or going, and then I remember him giving small anecdotes about fire, what fire means, and what our lands mean, what this could potentially be signs of. Ernest Alvarado, Research Associate Professor of Wildland Fire...
Sorry, Ernesto.
Oh, sorry. Ernesto Alvarado, Research Associate Professor of Wildland Fire Sciences in Seattle. He says, I grew up in northern Mexico. A group of people received a land grant in Mexico as a part of the agrarian reforms in the 30s. They were given this land and they had to deforest it, to clear it, which meant they had to cut all the mesquite. This is in the Chihuahuan Desert, and all the creosote bush and all that burning it up opened the land for agriculture. So when I was growing up, we were burning. And then at the end of the agricultural season, they burned the agricultural residues. I was in forest protection and fighting fires in 1980. I was doing firefighting, and then I started coordinating the firefighting for 2 million acres of the north of Mexico. After a while, I realized, okay, I was interested in fire, but I don't really know anything about fires. And people who know about my fires are my dad, my grandfather. So I went to grad school and I started studying fires. Joan, do you want to
Sure,
pick
sure,
up?
sure.
Thank you.
Steve Rigdon, former Yakima Tribe firefighter and general manager of Yakima Forest Products, Yakima Reservation. I was 18 years old when I started fighting fire. Fighting fires is like a family business, to be honest with you. My older brothers, a lot of cousins, we all fought fire. It's like an apprenticeship program for people interested in forestry, people that like the mountains, like to hunt, like to fish, like that outdoor life. And fighting fire is a way to earn your stripes. It's almost a kind of warrior vision quest, rite of passage into adulthood, because you have to grow up very fast. You're challenged with a lot of things, and you learn the behaviors of fire and incident commands and the weather and the environment and your sense of place and what you're doing and protecting. For Yakimas, it's been a very sound, sustainable avenue for our membership to become a part of protecting our resources, learning about them, and taking steps forward on career paths. Subhead, Native people used fire centuries before European settler contact. What did this look like? Washings. Fire management early on was really about resource management. Whether the foods would need additional help, we noticed that they were weak or there were other invasives coming in, or if the plants weren't regenerating to be strong enough, then we would do a traditional burn method. And this wouldn't be something that would happen every year. It's something that we would watch and monitor for the plant's growth. It's a part of something that's thousands of years old, a data set that we used for land management in the early years. This was noted in the 1850s through different journals from non-natives. It was really a source of confusion on their part for not knowing why we did that. To them, we were just burning things up for no reason, and it was very peculiar that they would be walking through areas that were charred. They didn't understand why. A lot of these practices were lost. Why? How are they coming back? Washings. My generation is one of the first not be criminalized or physically abused for saying some of our cultural teachings. I can't say that for my father. He was abused in public school for speaking his language within 6 miles of my home. So to have this kind of knowledge about the land is not something that was always supported and celebrated by federal, state, or local policies at all. Now we're kind of revisiting that. Alvarado. Some settlers, they saw what Native Americans were doing and actually thought, quote, this is the way you clear the land using fire, unquote. You want more wildlife, deer, then you burn. But the perception among European foresters and ecologists who were trained in Europe was that fire was the enemy. Any flame in the forest was not good. If Indians were burning, they were bad. When you have all these Europeans arriving to the West, they didn't know that this place was completely different from anywhere in the world. This is a system that burned. And to maintain healthy ecosystems, you have to burn, either naturally or using prescribed fires. So they arrive here to this place where fires have been happening for millions of years, and they try to exclude it because that was the best ecology they knew. When you arrive to a new place and you don't know anything about that forest, you apply what you have learned somewhere else. And that was the best knowledge European settlers had, but was not developed for these ecosystems. Disnodal. Especially among the elders, I've heard the comments throughout my career, quote, you need to burn more, you need to burn more. We used to always burn that. Why don't we do that anymore? Close quote. The elders that grew up in that age, people that would be in their 70s, 80s, 90s now, they grew up with the fire. That was a very common practice for them to light areas up in the spring and let them burn to the snow line. I think that people didn't recognize how many tribal folks were on the landscape historically and didn't realize how much they contributed to burn patterns across the Western US especially. So if you look at reports, Native populations declined by 80% to 95% between European contact on the East Coast and European explorations from disease when, say, Lewis and Clark came out here. Most people kind of assumed that the people that Lewis and Clark saw were all the people that were there, but in fact, that was 5 to 20% of the actual population. Could I pass it on? Was it to Sherry?
Okay. Rigdon. It just died to diseases. That footprint of those people managing those lands went away. Then you throw the treaties in there, rounding everybody up. You throw in the fires in the late 1800s and then the 1900s, when Smokey Bear said, "Fire is bad, put everything out." They took away a big part of who we are, and they took away a big part of our forest. They took away a big part of our grasslands and our meadows. I mean, you go back to some of the old literature, and there were hundreds of ethnobotany food types out in our meadows, both dry meadows, wet meadows, and everything in between. You cannot undo what has been done and try to get back to a place where we were 300 years ago, because 300 years ago, fire was a very deliberate tool for a lot of different places, for a lot of different reasons. Now those places have altered drastically, with a lot of impacts from a lot of different things, fire suppression being the biggest one. Alvarado. The United States were doing fire suppression for many years, for almost 50 years. During the late 60s, 70s, the US reversed course and started learning more about fire management instead of just fire suppression. The government recognized that the tribes were doing good things, but also it came as a response to the Bolt Court resolution. Some tribes started fighting for their fishing rights, the rights that were signed into law back in 1855 when most of the tribes signed treaties with the US government. They reserved the right to produce food their own way. It came as a court decision, the Bolt decision on fishing rights. It became a movement among the tribes. It was not just fishing. It was also the forest. It was medicinal plants. It was food. It was wildlife. The whole thing. To have clean water, you need a healthy forest. To have a healthy forest, you need fire. Everything goes back to the treaties. Whatever the tribes have gained, it's not because the federal government is willing to give more to the tribes. They're just asking for their rights. How can the relationship between non-tribal government entities like the Forest Service change to better accommodate the use of indigenous wildfire management practices? Alvarado. There was a recent paper I read that said something like, quote, "After thousands of years, finally Western science is catching up." So that tells you that. Yeah, Native Americans knew how to use fire. Over the years and generations of using fire, eventually you know how to manage it. You know how to control fire. You know the timing. You know the calendars on when to apply fire. So yeah, we are discovering things that they knew. We're catching up. Washings. Some federal agencies are now taking a second look at the data that was journaled and the areas where there was burning, and taking that and talking about traditional burn practices. We're seeing now a different application of that knowledge, incorporated with modern science. I don't know if that means that modern science is finally catching up, but I think it presents very interesting and exciting opportunities regarding how fast and quickly land can regenerate if you utilize a data set that was previously utilized for thousands of years. What kind of results do we start to see once we start to incorporate different knowledge that's been there and using modern day technology along with it? The things we know about now, with mapping and drones and things like that, we didn't have that thousands of years ago. How do we incorporate all this now together to have a really strong resource management for the land? I do think there are differences in the landscape now and in our resources, but I think that management is still possible, especially utilizing our native knowledge. I pass it back to you, Maya.
Thank you.
See where we are? Rigged on.
Native knowledge, yeah. Rigdon. Governments, both tribal and federal, United States, or even international, they determine the wealth of the world. They determine the wealth of the community. People really need to keep the wealth with the stakeholders, not the shareholders, not corporate America, because a lot of times the bottom line, dividends, and the rest of it, they don't take in consideration of the environment. Quote, what kind of results do we start to see once we start to incorporate different knowledge that's been there and using modern day technology along with it? Decitel. Most organizations are between 90% and 98% effective at catching fires during initial attack, during that first 24-hour burn period. But the problem with that is the 2% to 10% we lose. We lose under the absolute worst burning conditions. It's Haynes Index 5, it's 100 degrees, it's 10% humidity. So when you have acres burned, they're burning at high intensity, much higher than they would have historically. And you're missing opportunities to get fire on the landscape and on the shoulders of those fire seasons when, say, in June or September, when you have moderated temperatures, higher relative humidity, lower fire impacts. The biggest concern is that if you don't implement some things across the fire season, across all of the opportunities, you have to get field treatments done and see some of these positive benefits from fire, and you're limited to when those few get away. Then you're really kind of magnifying the impacts of fire on the landscape. What will these practices look like in the future? Even with the revival of Indigenous management practices, the landscape is changing. Washinez. It's a good point to think about climate change, right? Because there's a definite urgency. Some people in this area in the Yakima Valley are very conservative. Climate change is a trigger word for them. But if you can show them that here's a project that returned this amount, had these results, and was more cost effective by applying this older data set, by applying the elders' knowledge with the scientific knowledge, if you can show them that, that's something that people need to know about in the assessment and implementation phases. We talk about this constantly. How do you, as a Native person, live in such a conservative area and get Joe Farmer so excited about this stuff? Joe Farmer can be on either side of the political aisle technically. Farmers look at the grand scale of things. They look at the land and see the results. And if they see something that is regenerated or see something that looks to be beneficial, they get excited about it as well. Decitel. I always struggle when say, the Forest Service has a desired future condition. Quote, we want it to be pre-European contact from 100 years ago, end quote. Well, 100 years ago was pre-European contact, but you're describing a specific point in time that developed under a changing population dynamics with, but you were describing a specific point in time that developed under a changing population, dynamics with Native Americans, and a changing burn dynamic because you just had less people to do that burning. So that's something we'll never recreate, because obviously you can't put that much fire on the landscape anymore. But I think there are options from a mechanical treatment standpoint, and obviously it's a lot more complicated because you have people living all over now where you didn't back then. Obviously, with climate change, most of the predictive models we see point to longer, drier summers. We're probably going to see increased burn acreages for our area of Washington. That prediction says we will have a 3 to 4 times increase in burn areas over the next 50 years. So I think we need to shift perspectives away from trying to stop fires to making sure that we're doing fuels treatments and forest health treatments throughout the year to make sure that when fire comes, you can have a resilient landscape that responds to fire. I think people understand the need. I don't think we have a plan to figure out I don't think we have a plan figured out on how to get us there, so people have recognized that fire has won the battle for the last couple of decades. That trend does not look like it's going to slow down anytime soon, based on some of the models that I've seen for another 15 to 20 years. So I think people understand that we need to do something different, and that's a good first step, recognizing that you have a problem. And now we'll have to come up with a solution about how we work with fire on the shoulders of the season, that it's not a 100% suppression, that we allow some acres to burn under more moderated fire burning conditions. Rigdon. It's easy to go and convert land over to farming or homes or shopping malls, but when you try to tame the wilderness, it's a different beast. And nobody's been able to tame it, not even Native Americans. But what we'd been able to do is try to work with it, try to find opportunities where they may lie, be sensible about it, and create a continuous relationship, a continuous interaction. The American way, or the Euro-American way, or the imperialistic way, has been to exploit the environment to get everything that you can from it and then leave it for somebody else to clean up. Leave it for the indigenous people to clean up, and then go exploit another area. Our ways are still here. Are they quite as robust? Are they quite effective as they used to be pre-contact? No, but they're still here, and we have an opportunity to build on them. We have an opportunity to create our own pathways with our own foods, our medicines, our languages, our songs, our culture, and our resiliency to adapt has really allowed us to survive. So that concludes this article. And now, normally what we would do, which we'll continue to do, is we're going to read our community guidelines for discussion. And I'm going to put them in the chat. So if anyone is interested in reading these out loud for us, that would be super helpful. And if not, we can ask our metabolic team member, Olan, who has volunteered to read them tonight. I'm just popping these in the chat. There's the Google Doc. So I'll just hold space for a second, and if anyone's feeling the urge to read them for us. Great. Olan, over to you.
So, 1. We agree to not blame ourselves or others for the misinformation we have learned, but to accept responsibility for not repeating misinformation after we have learned otherwise. 2. We agree to listen respectfully to each other without interruptions. Only one person speaks at a time. 3. We acknowledge that we may be at different stages of learning on the content and discussion topics. 4. We agreed that no one should be required or expected to speak for their whole race or gender. We can't, even if we wanted to. 5. We will hold each other's best interest at heart. We hope everyone has come to the table to learn, grow, and share. We will trust that people are doing the best they can. Let's challenge and encourage each other to do better. 6. We'll share responsibility for including all voices in the discussion. If you have a tendency to dominate discussions, try taking a step back. If you tend to stay quiet, try challenging yourself to share ideas so others can learn from you. 7. Silence is golden. Sometimes there will be long pauses. Sometimes silence can create space for folks who need that space to come forward. We agree to not fill silences out of discomfort. We will hold this silence with care and move forward intentionally. We welcome those of you whose minds are bursting with ideas to write them in the chat bar. 8. The facilitators are not experts. They are here to help facilitate the process. They and everyone in the group are here to learn. 9. It's okay not to know. Keep in mind that we are all still learning and are bound to make mistakes when approaching a complex task or exploring new ideas. Be open to changing your mind and make space for others to do so as well. 10. The facilitators are not moderators. They are not trained to moderate personal grievances. If discussion stops being about the reading and instead breaches into accusations and aggression, please respect the facilitator switching gears and refocusing on the text. And there's this note. If any of these guidelines are breached, a metabolic team member will reach out to you privately in the chat to provide a reminder. If the guidelines continue to be breached, they will provide a verbal call-in. By staying on this Zoom call, you are agreeing to these community guidelines for our discussion period.
Thank you, Olin. So now we're beginning our community discussion section. And full transparency, after Ryan and I read and watched these pieces, both of us didn't feel that we necessarily wanted to come up with community questions like we did with the abolitionist readings. And one of the reasons being is that these felt like very different readings, and we all have a really personal, experience right now with the landscape being what it is. So I just thought we could hold this time either to reflect on the readings together, to reflect really on any perspectives that you have, anything that surprised you, anything you learned. Really, this is a time to ask questions. It can be, we're holding an open space.
I'd like to say something. Can you hear me? Thank you so much for organizing this series. I wanted to share, for me, a guideline for this series is that even though we might be reading things that are learning tools so that we know more, I want to make sure for myself, and would love to offer to the group, to make it feel okay to talk personally and empathetically for the forest. I don't think this needs to be a bookish. I think we need to learn, but I also think we need to feel. Because with the environment, sometimes it's really hard to make these connections unless you can do it from an empathetic connection. And I think it's really important to talk about our associations with these readings. So it'd be nice to hear from other people tonight so that Maya and Ryan and I can talk about the guidelines and maybe adding a guideline for this series, which is that we read, that responding to these readings with personal stories and narratives about them is not only okay, but wonderful.
Lexa in the chat just mentioned 1491, New Revelations of the Americas. It's literally right next to me on the couch. That's the book that I'm reading right now. And I wanted to mention it as well. So this is this is a beautiful coincidence. I just got to the part in the book where the author has started talking about fires, specifically in the Northeast, and how the fires were used historically. And I just think it's such an interesting subject, and I'm so excited that somebody else read the same book that I read, that I'm reading right now, and got the same thing out of it, because I'm finding it an absolute joy. So seconded on that, and thank you for listening.
I attend the Los Angeles Water Dialogues put on by LA County, and they had someone talking about fires in California this past week. And I can look for and post the link to the talk. It was really good because he was saying a lot of these same things, that our protocol has been not to let fires happen, and that everybody blames the Santa Ana winds, but most of the fires are caused by humans intentionally or by problems with the electrical lines, and that it's partly because we populated so densely now that there's electricity going to more areas. There was an area in California where he showed the contours of a fire several decades ago, and one that was more recent. The area was the same, but the population was entirely different. So the effects on humans, which is how we perceive the significance of these fires, was entirely different. So I'll look for a link for that and post it because it was really helpful.
One thing that I am continuing to learn and continuing to discover and continuing to try to rearrange in my brain, one thing that came up in the abolitionist reading is kind of finding the seed of the oppressor, or I forget the exact language that we read about, but finding something within yourself that you, seed of the oppressor within, by Audre Lorde. Thank you, Maya. We talked about that a lot in the abolitionist circle or reading, and I'm finding that, you know, some of these readings, I think I'm also going to have to try to, I'm going to be finding that within myself and relearning certain things, you know, like I found it interesting then both things that we, with the video that we watched and the interviews that we read, Smokey the Bear came up in both things, you know, and historically speaking, he had a big presence. You know, here in Vermont, you see him on this, like a picture of him on the side of the road with like fire levels, you know, and that's everywhere. But thinking about that and like where you live and the historical connotations of that, and I don't know, I think that mindset, the colonial mindset that's still kind of dominating and that fire is bad, that's something that I am looking to root out of my body, you know, and look for that. So that's one thing that I'm kind of carrying into this conversation, which I wasn't really expecting, but I'm you know, I'm going to be looking for it.
I would like to just share what I'm feeling, thinking in the moment. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to embroider, because I just joined this afternoon kind of spontaneously, seeing this, that you were offering this, and I found this when I was on a hike this past couple of weeks, last week, this incredibly beautiful and perfectly formed acorn. And it was just so perfect with the acorn still in it. And I kept wanting to draw it or do something with it. And I used this opportunity to start embroidering it. So just sitting with this acorn and really looking at it closely was such a gift because I spent a couple of days in different settings up in the hills around Topanga this past, which is close to where I live, this past week. And in one place that I went to, it was a summer camp that was completely burned down in the Woolsey fire 2 years ago. And we were there with a group of folks that were talking about how to rebuild the summer camp after it burned to the ground. And the director of the camp, was standing in front of this unbelievably beautiful 400-year-old oak tree that he was so worried it was going to burn down in the fire. But when he got there, like whenever they were able to get back into the land, actually got to Malibu, he saw that this tree was still standing. And when we walked around the property, so many of these oak trees that were so charred at the base were vibrantly green and beautiful, and it was so heartening, and it made me so appreciative. And this was also coupled with, I was in Topanga last week, sitting at a place that we go once a year, and we sit in this lookout up in Topanga State Park. And I was feeling hesitant to go there because it's been a little bit of an oak tree graveyard there the past couple of years with the drought, and like the area that I've been going to this spot for 20 years, like once a year we visit there, and it feels so heavy with loss and dead branches. But I sat there for a couple hours just like looking at these branches that had fallen, where my kids years ago climbed on these branches, and I realized that these dead branches that had fallen are really critical to the ecosystem of the forest. And I sort of also gained this appreciation and just sort of sat with that and kind of grieved, and also felt and tried to feel the understanding of just that whole cycle. And I think that 2 books that I read this year that really helped me to understand that is Overstory and Braiding Sweetgrass, 2 books that really inspired me and really changed my perspective deeply here of just the ecosystem. And Braiding Sweetgrass, it's not a new book, but Robin Kimmerer, who's on the reading list, was so inspiring to me and truly changed my perspective on how to look at the land. And I just want to say one last thing and I'm done. I just want to give a shout out to the wilderness firefighters, because I have a good friend who also happens to be a Buddhist monk, who is one of the strongest guys I know. And he is out there on the fires right now leading a team of Angelinos out into the fires. He goes 2 weeks, then comes back 2 weeks, and goes out 2 weeks with all these chainsaws and water and stuff on his back, hiking miles and miles into the forest to dig trenches and cut down areas so that the fires will recede. And he also speaks to this change in policy about using burns. And it seems like that there is so much greater receptivity to the kind of fire management that this article spoke to. So grateful to him and his crew, and grateful to all of you for creating the space to talk about these things.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Sherry. I really resonate. I grew up in Topanga, and my mom, Lauren, who's here tonight, still lives in Topanga, and Topanga is my home, and it's been really, really painful to watch these oaks suffer so much. It's really emotional, but something that I wanted to echo, and I had just grabbed a bunch of books because I thought this would be a great time to share too, is Braiding Sweetgrass. Robin Wall Kimmerer is on this reading list, and she's a Native author, and she's absolutely incredible, and I highly recommend. I'll type these in the chat too. Another Native author that I really recommend any folks who are interested in learning more about this. We're not actually reading any Vine. This is Vine Deloria Jr.'s God is Red. We're not reading this in this reading group because I think we need to read the whole book. Like, it's not like you can read a chapter kind of thing, but for anyone who's interested more about Native religious perspectives on land and how that's such a critical component, this is highly recommended. And then Naomi Klein, The Burning Case for a Green New Deal, on fire. This is super amazing. Then Omer C. Stewart, Forgotten Fires, Native Americans and the Transient Wilderness. And then Rebecca Henderson, Reimagining Capitalism in a World on Fire. So I'm going to type these all in here, and I just thought it would be nice to show like a stack of books that are like awesome. It's so much to learn. So yeah, thank you all, and let's continue sharing. I just wanted to hop in for a sec.
Maya, that's so great that you mentioned Vine Deloria. I've just discovered him. He is fantastic. I've just ordered there's a book called The Vine Deloria Reader, which is a selection of his essays, which I've just ordered. And I was reading a section of it mentioned in some academic paper, and he is just fantastic. But I also wanted to alert everyone that the biggest wildfires in the world at the moment are going on in Brazil in a place called the Pantanal, which is the world's biggest tropical wetland. And it's an absolute tragedy that we're just not hearing anything about, that so far this year, twice the area of the California fires has been burned in the Pantanal. And it's this wetland adjacent to the Amazon, and scientists are really sounding the alert that this absolutely essential world ecosystem is just on the brink of being destroyed forever. So, you know, this burning is a global problem. And of course, everybody knows about the huge fires that we've had in Australia recently. But I'm just surprised that this one in South America, which is by far the world's biggest fire, it just isn't even being talked about. I put a link earlier in the chat to it. It did a very sobering article about it from a Science magazine.
Another thing that I wanted to put out there that I think we may want to consider for our guidelines is the idea that we're actively pursuing the interdependence of all these fires and all of the social justice issues that go with them. Like, we're actively looking for the big picture here, because we have to fight reductionist thinking about these fires. Most of how they're reported are about the place that the fire's at, not about the network it's a part of. And I really think we need to practice thinking to scale when it comes to the fires.
That's a really good point, Lauren. In this article about the Pantanal, they're making the point that scientists believe that the Pantanal is already something like 3 or 4 degrees higher than it should be, temperature-wise. And they believe that, you know, in the next few decades, it's going to go up by 7 degrees. Now, I don't know what the specifics of that ecology is that makes that so, but they made that point. So the idea that we can keep global warming below 2 degrees is, I mean, at least in that area of the world, we're already blown way, way past that. Hey, let me also point you guys to, do any of you know about this animation that was done by Naomi Klein and Alexandra AOC?
No.
Called The Green New Deal. So it's just come out. It's an animation that it's about 6 or 7 minutes long, and it's envisioning a future in which the Green New Deal took place. And the film, there's one that's just come out, and it's a follow-on to another one that came out 2 years ago. The first one was written by AOC, and the second one's been written by a young African-American activist. But both of them are like optimistic visions of the future, instead of sort of looking at the apocalyptic, you know, how everything's necessarily going to hell. They're putting forward a vision that, you know, what if we actually enacted everything now? that we could in fact realize a better future. And Naomi Klein's been the producer of both of them. I'll put a link in the chat because they're really, really fantastic to see. They're both produced by the news site, the Intercept, which Naomi Klein works for.
I just posted it.
Oh, you've got it, Lauren.
In the chat bar. It's just
Yes.
7 minutes. We could even, possibly start one of these sessions with a short animation like that.
Absolutely. So the one that's just come out, it just came out yesterday, is the second one. There was a previous one that came out about 2 years ago, and there was an amazing article that accompanied the first one by Naomi Klein about the role that the arts have to play in reimagining more optimistic futures, which is a really, really fantastic and inspiring article about. She talks about the role of the arts played in FDR's original New Deal. And it's a very inspiring article for what could happen now, and of the necessity, she's arguing actually for the necessity of the arts to play a role in helping to reimagine society in a more optimistic fashion. I'll put that in the chat, Lauren. But I think you're right, Lauren, that the interconnectedness is critical.
There's also the issue of the atmosphere, which doesn't know any borders. So when people on the East Coast are breathing smoke from the fires of the West, that particles are traveling in the atmosphere, in the cloud strata, all the way across the continent and also across oceans. So thinking to scale is so critical, and it's not practiced out there in the discourse about fires of the West. What's it a part of?
Lauren, kind of bouncing off what you just said about the smoke going across the country, the smoke that came to Vermont, we saw like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. Clear blue skies changed to absolutely gray. It reminded me of the Woolsey fires, actually, when I was living in LA. And with that, we got a really early frost. And that frost killed a lot of crops, local farms, killed a lot of our plants, and it also fall is almost over here because of it, because it jump-started everything like 3 or 4 weeks early. Wow. Which, at the time the meteorologists were saying was because they weren't expecting the smoke, like their radars weren't expecting the smoke. It made everything colder. So it also ruined crops over here 3,000 miles away.
That's so interesting. I'm so glad that you shared that. That's that kind of first-person observational narrative about like how one thing affects another. And there's interconnections that are profound when you're sensing them that may take a decade before they show up in a piece of writing.
Totally. And just one more thing off that, and this is related, but it's like the opposite end. And I realized after we had these like 4 nights of frost, the plants that are frost hardy, like they're okay going through frost, I realized that now when I pick them and tend to them, the plants having gone through frost, they're a lot thicker. They're a lot harder. They're a lot kind of like juicier, which is interesting, thinking that frost killed all of these plants over here, but it made these plants better. And it made our celeriac sweeter, and it made our leeks sweeter, and it changed certain things. But it made me think about how fires actually are part of the Western ecosystem, and the fire makes the seeds of certain plants open up, as frost here on the East Coast does certain other things to plants.
It's such an interesting thing too when you think about the desiccation of a seed, you know, it drying out being one form of preserving it. Like worse things could happen to a seed than drying out. Rot would be worse, for example. And that then connects to what you're saying about the freeze. It's interesting that the freeze is also a preservation strategy and a protection for the seed until the spring. Well, so we have some things I think we need to talk about, Maya, Ryan, and I, about like last time we sort of tried to limit, like tried to only share one time after the reading. And I'm wondering, you know, with this subject, whether more discursive conversation is helpful, or I'm not sure, because people like Margaret know so much. I like want her to talk whenever she wants, but I wonder how we should talk about it or open that up to the group who participated last time about, you know, Maya, do you have?
Yeah, my thought process here, and I just want to clarify, the goal last time was not to share once. The goal last time was just about dominating conversation and allowing space for folks who need that space to come forward. And I really think that that's necessary in conversation. Like, you know, it's important for folks who dominate conversation to allow space for other speakers. However, I do think because there are people in our group and a lot of us have a lot of knowledge about this, and I don't think we should necessarily, I think we can decide collectively, for example, that we'd love to hear from Margaret. We'd love to hear from a lot of people, you know, whoever feels like they have a lot of knowledge, I'd love to learn from you. And it's more about the nature of domination and recognizing that that's critical for us to hold space against.
Jen, do you want to say anything, or do you and Cindy want to say anything more about the embroideries to people who may not have been here, like, or Roxanne, about the last series? And
Sure. So I can also put in the link, the chat bar, a link to the website where we have current embroidery patterns. So as Maya said in the beginning, these are native plants that have been grown at the Metabolic Studio. And I can also put in the chat bar ones from the last time. While I do that, Roxanne, do you have anything to add? I think you're on mute. Yeah, I can't hear you.
Yeah, no, I just unmuted. Not really. I think it would be nice, you know, eventually to share what they look like at present, what their condition is, and so how this next series involves animals, insects. What's the difference? Where can you answer that, Jen? Next embroidery series.
I can help out with that. These are pollinators of the native plants that we have at the moon. So all of these images are screen grabs from high definition video that Emily and Cascade have taken, and they're hand drawn by Mish, who works very hard with those plants. So it's in order to add the pollinators into our larger patterning of native plants and to acknowledge that interdependence thereby.
Thank you. I'd love to recenter discussion back on the readings and just hold that space together for a bit more. If anyone feels like any reflections came up or any thoughts are there, I want to kind of bring that back. I want to hone that back in.
Maya, I just wanted to say it reminded me so much of discussions that are taking place in Australia with the Aboriginal people.
Well, just from the video, it's so clear that there is all this knowledge handed down with the indigenous people. Are there, does anyone know, are there talks in the works where they're talking with forestry commissions and things everywhere? What's going on with that?
After this discussion, I feel really motivated to talk to Ricardo, who's coming back from being up in the hills in another week. But I actually really want to pick his brains. And if we meet again, I'll share with you his perspective from being out fighting the fires, just what the approach is, how he is being trained, and what the conversations are with him and his team about this. It seems to me from my last conversation with him before he went out again that these conversations are happening, that his whole crew of 12 guys are really thinking about this when they're out in the fields dealing with the fires, the recent fires in Southern California. But now I'm really curious to know more.
There are many conversations that I know that are happening on a policy level about fires of the West, but they're located within the bureaucracies of the governance of the land. So the discussions that are happening for forest management on a federal level are different from state forest lands, and then national parks are separate category altogether, and all of them interlock. So what happens is that the one that has the worst forest management wins because of the way fire spreads. Like everybody has to kind of be in it together. So there's a kind of built-in problem. That's the way forests are held, you know, how they're organized.
I noticed that, and I've heard, and I noticed that I've read that there are prescribed and controlled burns in California that are organized by the state, but it doesn't sound like they are based on the knowledge of indigenous people. And I really don't know what how they're doing it, but it doesn't sound like what we saw in the video, which is kind of sad. Very sad, actually.
This is Laura. Thanks you all again for amazing material and exchange. On the note of conversations in California at the policy level, since the governor made the announcement last week, or yeah, a week ago, about the suggestion to the legislature to not allow fracking anymore, there's been a flurry of ways that that conversation could occur that are meaningful to stakeholders. one of which has been put forth by the Climate Mobilization Project, to have community gatherings all over California to give input from all stakeholders as to how that might occur. And it would be interesting to bring Indigenous folks from these areas and this conversation centered in that. And that if somebody is willing to help make any introductions, I do know a lot of folks in the Indigenous communities across California, but I'm not aware of anyone focused on this particular thing, although I'm sure they are, you know? So if there's anyone who wants to help with that, I'd be really eager to bring that to the conversation with Wade Crowfoot, who works for the governor, who has Indigenous Native lineage. If that's of use or interest.
I just put an article in the chat. It's from NPR. It's from August 28th, and it's specifically about California and their efforts to start working with tribes and working together, forest management. It's kind of like a new thing that's in the talks, and I just wanted to read a just quick paragraph from it. It says, in Northern California, the Karuk and Yurok tribes have partnered with the Forest Service to manage land for traditional values and wildfire management. Studies have shown that the two goals work hand in hand. So that's really good news. And the article's in the chat. I learned a lot just from that one article. It goes through a lot of different things. But it seems, promising, It's just too bad that it takes like catastrophic, horrible fires for it to come to this. But anyways.
Thank you, that's great. I will check that out myself personally for sure. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you all so much for all these resources, and I've learned so much tonight already, and I really appreciate all of you. And if y'all want to transition now into, we can continue talking about any of these thoughts that are coming up, but also now we can share what we've been working on tonight, if that feels good to everyone. So I can start. I bought this yarn today that I'm really excited about, and I'm making myself a bag with it. So I've been working on this tonight, and I'm really excited about it.
I just finished the abolitionist embroidery that I was working on. So now I can start on the wildfires, but this is it.
Nice.
Looks great, Cindy.
Thanks.
Also, feel free to unmute yourselves to provide feedback to each other. Positive feedback.
Pretty, pretty.
Cindy, does that have beads on it?
No, it's just, I don't know what kind of stitch that is, but
oh yeah,
I saw it on YouTube.
It almost looks like little beads are in there. It's beautiful.
I like this little fuzzy part down here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well done. I really love it.
Thanks.
I just had a tip to offer. If anybody gets, there's some metallic embroidery thread that we're putting in the kits. And I find that you can't use it as the 6 strands. What I've been doing is taking it apart and doing 2. And the other thing that has helped me a lot is I've been taking clear nail polish and putting it on each end. Because otherwise, there's the metallic to it, it kind of comes apart. And you really got to hold tight to it as you do it, but it's got such a beautiful effect when it works.
Wait, raise it up higher. There we go. Wow.
I used it for the wings of the bee, and it's got an iridescent cast to it, and it's great, but it's definitely one that I would recommend not using the whole thick thing because it kind of comes up a little bit.
God, that bee looks furry. It's amazing. That stitching makes.
Yeah, let's see the bee again one time.
Can you go closer?
Let me.
You have to turn your green screen off.
Okay, let me do that.
I mean your virtual background.
New settings.
I don't understand when everyone turned into professional embroiderers.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's incredible.
That's really beautiful.
I have to tell you, this whole week I've been doing it in my spare time, and it has brought my stress levels down so much. It's so enjoyable.
Incredible. It's really like sculptural, all those lines. It's amazing.
I think this round I was really trying to give it more dimension than last time. I was more coloring them in. I was trying to give it more depth.
Incredible.
But so if anybody does get the metallic thread, it's lots of fun. It's challenging, and definitely putting the clear nail polish on the bottom of the head and the tail helps tremendously.
Great.
And Jen, do you think you could like mix a couple of strands of the metallic in with another color?
I think that's a great idea, and I think that would probably give it, if you mix the metallic with one of the cotton, it would give it more structure and it would lay better in the material.
Okay.
Because without it, it kind of bounces up. So that's what I was doing tonight. I was kind of going over the metallic with the cotton to like bring it down again. So that's a great idea.
I hope I get some metallic in my package.
Remember to put some in yours.
Thank you.
Can anybody share the stitches when they're covering large areas of the same color? Because I'm finding that I'm trying to innovate something so that it doesn't kind of I don't know if you can tell, but
yeah, it looks beautiful.
Go up a little bit.
Say where?
Oh, there.
That looks so beautiful.
It looks great.
Are there beads in that one too?
No, I did. No, not this, not yet. I have some beads to stick in there, but I was going to put, this is a poppy. Show it again. Show it. Not
gorgeous.
Oh my God. I don't know if it's so gorgeous. I'm just
it's beautiful.
Yes, it's gorgeous.
It's totally amazing.
Textures are profound.
I'm curious, which stitch did you use for the poppy? Because I need a stitch that looks like that.
I don't know the name of it, but Jen knows.
Which one?
It's the one that you You turn the thread around the needle.
French knot.
What is that one, Jen?
I actually don't know. I think it's Rachel that knows that one.
French knot.
Or Olan.
French knot. Yeah.
Olan. Olan, is it a French knot?
Well, that's
I believe it is a French knot.
I finally got the hang of it, and it gives a sculptural effect.
It's beautiful. I can't do it. But I know the name of it.
But I'm feeling insecure or inept about covering, like, because this is a poppy, and the leaf structure is all white, and when I look at photographs of them, I'm trying to figure out how the heck to do it, like to do little tiny stitches in some sections and then broad areas of you know what I'm trying to say? I just don't know, but I'm just doing the best I can.
Well, one of the things that I really love about that is how that white thread looks on the embroidery cloth. Like I wouldn't have, that it actually kind of reveals the shadow between the threads.
I know.
I'm really inspired by that. I wouldn't have like been bold enough to imagine doing that much white on white, but I think it's kind of genius and it works really well.
Well, thank you.
That's very elegant.
Well, that's very encouraging because I feel pretty insecure doing it.
I think I'm going to do a white bumblebee now. It'll be like a photographic negative.
I have white shiny thread that you can put in there, Lauren.
All right, I'm down. I was definitely looking for inspiration, so thanks, Maria.
Well, good, because I'm just kind of like plowing ahead and trying to do the best I can, but we'll see how it comes out.
Ryan,
Whoa!
our psychedelic mushroom we've been working on since the first day of our embroidery.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Wow. That's great.
That's insane.
They're so cool.
And it looks like it's got a bite taken out of that pink section.
Oh, wow.
I could do that tonight.
Not done.
Professional, Ryan.
I love the colors.
Love the green. I love it on the green cloth.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
He made the bite because it's why we see all these colors.
Yeah. The virtual bite.
I think we keep it.
that's magnificent.
You know what's really interesting is seeing how different people treat the same flower. That I'd love to see that, you know, because
I know.
we learn from each other that way.
Here's a horseweed that the one that I've been working on that I keep showing because I'm not getting very far.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Beautiful. Oh, wow.
I just did a little bit of another stitch that I'm inventing up here today.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, I like that curly thing going on.
Yeah, yeah.
I love the kind of like randomness of the outer lines of all the leaves. Like there isn't any like single like straight line at all.
No, every time I start again, I forget how I did the last thing, so I try and do
So beautiful.
Because I didn't have the kit, so I just improvised with the. So this was again the.
Yay!
Oh yeah.
Beginning, and it was terrific because I just grew it and then
yeah,
I did.
Beautiful.
It was like a really great process. So thank you for enabling.
Thank you. Oh my God, that's so fantastic.
Yeah.
Got a great color match too.
Yeah, I was really thrilled about that. I got to go for the browns and figure out the stitches for the texture of the little textures of the little.
So nice, the little hats. Yeah.
It was really cool because one is really like this chestnut brown and one is this vibrant green.
Yeah, beautiful.
I wanted to share. Remember, our fire alarm went off right when we started.
Yeah.
I wanted to share why I think it went off.
Okay.
I'm fermenting 2 big pots of kimchi, and it's it's a thing that the fumes that the kimchi is releasing actually like thickens the air in the same way that smoke does. And our fire
Wow.
alarms went off. And I only know that because my dad, that happened to my dad like a couple weeks ago. So, and our windows are closed for the first time since we've lived in this new place because it's cold out now, that the fumes kind of built up. So that's what it was. I'm like pretty positive, but it was really ironic that it happened right when we started talking about fires.
Yeah.
It's great.
How cold is it?
Um, I mean, I'll check. Let's see. Right now it's 44
Wow.
with a low of 41.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Next week the lowest will be 32.
Wow.
Yeah, the highest temperature we got coming is 65 degrees. So
That's the nice thing about living back east. To see the
But-
seasons change.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, when they, I think it was in one of the readings that they were talking about the way the native and indigenous people do burns. It sounds like they do them at times when the ground is cold and also up to snow lines. I thought that was kind of interesting. That's a way to control how they go by doing them at times when they are not going to ignite areas that they don't want to ignite. But I don't know how would they do it in California when it's really, we don't get snows here.
Wait, we get a lot of snow. We're one of the larger snow countries.
No,
I mean,
but I'm talking about like right now we have the Bobcat fire going just north of Azusa, and it's really a big fire. It's covering a lot of land. And in that area, I don't think there is snow there. Does anybody know?
I don't know.
Roxanne is.
I don't know.
Head, but
Yeah.
there's a lot we need to learn.
Well, I think part of what the, we'll learn more about this during the series, but part of what's necessary and why places that are really dry now used to be burned more frequently and used to not be as dangerous when they burned is that, like we kind of touched on today, when you burn, moisture actually is able to be, there's more moisture retention in the soil afterwards, like the roots are stronger.
Oh yeah.
They're able to actually be more healthy in the long run. So if you're doing prescribed and traditional burning every year, it actually creates a less dense, less fire prone ecosystem. So it's in general safer. Plus you'll then have more humidity in the soil, which creates more humidity in the atmosphere. So it's kind of a whole cycle perspective. So like, for example, Topanga never snows now, but if you look back at photos from the 20s, we almost got snow most winters, just so you can see like those are both climatic shifts, but also climate and soil health are so deeply connected. And it's interesting how we kind of are, I hope what my intention was with putting this syllabus together was dissecting the ways that climate change is so often labeled as the only issue that's causing widespread fire destruction. Right. And absolutely I was an environmental studies major. I 100% believe in climate change, but there's also traditional cultural burnings that really did impact this entire landscape and created a different climate in and of itself.
Do you think that there's a significant impact made by non-native plant life, or is that a little harder to measure?
I'd love to hear if anyone else has perspectives on this either. or two. From what I can understand, and from the studies that I've read about how native and non-native plants impact ecosystems, it really depends on the plant. It's so plant specific, it's really hard to, it depends on like soil depth, it depends on so many different factors. So I think generally speaking, really it's biodiversity within the plant sphere that creates a healthy ecosystem generally. And part of what's the problem with invasive species, not just non-native, but specifically invasive species, is that they create a monoculture. And that influences what insects can live in the soil and what microbiomes can be in the soil. So I don't know, honestly, is the short answer, but I do know that plants in general create, like, we have an idea of like what's native and what's non-native, and that we kind of label it as good and bad, whereas like plants are just doing their thing. It's really invasive species that Ryan just got a notification. What is it?
I don't know if we want to bring it into the conversation.
It's news.
Yeah.
So
I think that these things that we're all wondering about and thinking about are really incredible things to know. And I mean, this is what I'm hoping to learn. Like, just it seems to me really empowering to think about the kind of like, for example, with the recent fires, we were in the middle of a heat wave, and then the fires were making the sky completely dark, and it got cooler, and that helped the fires. So it's these networks of things that happen that I think it'd be really wonderful to learn more about as we go through this. And if people do have questions just that they're hoping to explore through this, it'd be really nice. Just put them in the chat, and we can start to gather this and bring the conversation deeper as it becomes more focused.
thanks for that, Roxanne. And I also think it's super awesome for us to clarify that like the syllabus that we have is completely open to change. And like if there's any readings that people feel really strongly they want to cover, we can absolutely consider that. And like any feedback is totally warranted and what's the word? Encouraged.
Invited.
Invited.
Is the syllabus on a Google Doc that we can access? Is that did you put that in the chat?
I haven't. It's in the email out, but I'll put it in the chat right now.
That'd be great. And the old syllabus is there too for.
I can put the old syllabus in the chat too. It is available. I think it's on our website now.
And it's on our website too.
Okay.
Both of them are.
This has been great. Thank you.
I would like to say that the question of non-native plants is a really complicated, big subject. But I'd like to also just hold space for good questions, because they're like, it's good to even have that list. And I wanted to just sort of think about the kind of prairies that existed with the buffaloes that were transformed so utterly in the last 150 years with the railways that, took priority to be built. And with those ranging buffalo also went the native people's sacred rituals around that relationship with that animal. And so these ideas of like native plants and non-native plants are also so connected to thinking about reinvigorating indigenous practices back into the forest, because they're practices that are about native plants. So I don't know, there's no easy answer to that, but there is also a complex ethic and stewardship issues around that, I think.
I appreciate that response, Lauren. Thank you. I mean, I wasn't looking for like a definitive answer, and I know that those like almost certainly don't exist for like most anything that I would be asking or curious about. I just, I heard environmental science and was immediately like, oh, tell me like literally everything you know forever, please. But no, I think thinking about interconnectedness is really helpful. And obviously like an instinctive response maybe to be like anti-human, but that's like unproductive and like inaccurate and all kinds of bad stuff. And I think understanding the role that people have played in the Americas for like however many hundreds and thousands of years, and how fire specifically is played into that, I think is really useful. And I think a lot of people's initial reactions to the fire is that it's frightening because things should stay the same, and people find a lot of like modern Western culture, I think people want things to stay the same or want things to go back slightly to when they were, when they would consider them better. But I think seeing seeing the land as fluid and as involved in a cycle that's longer than multi-generational cycles, I think is really helpful for like big picture thinking and the kind of stuff that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and I just want to hop in there. Part of the reason that I try to steer clear from the like overarching demonization of non-native plants in ecological structures is that it is based on the narrative that we have to return to what the land was pre-colonization, which was touched upon in this reading tonight, because what we have is what we have now, and it is impossible to return a landscape pre anything. Like landscapes change based off of what was influenced there,
especially with climate shifts and
yeah,
like zone changes, like what
like no matter what kind of land management we're attempting to do, the land the environmental impacts that have happened and they will continue to happen. And that's not necessarily like a doom and gloom perspective, it's just a real perspective. And we can learn to evolve. And that's why I really want to highlight the term that I put in the introduction, is that we're trying to build a more resilient West. And it's really critical that we take that term resiliency and run with it, because the concept of sustainability, which was so touted as like the peak of environmentalism, is actually really needed to be problematized right now, because landscapes are not sustainable. They are evolving, they are resilient, they are constantly in flux. So yeah, I just want to say, like, there's a really important narrative here to embrace that things have changed and that we have to move forward and learn from native sovereignty to move forward.
That's really well said. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to say one more thing. And that I also think what I studied, what my thesis was about, is about rewilding, which is conservation methodology specifically focused on reintroducing top carnivores or apex predators or any kind of long-standing animal that influences an entire ecosystem. And my thesis focused on rewilding Yellowstone National Park with the reintroduction of the wolf in 1995. So I just want to clarify that, like, reintroduction is critical, and like reshaping landscape is part of that narrative, but it is also about, like, yeah, like, what are we reinstating? How do we move forward with this perspective without just trying to recreate a system that is impossible to recreate, but also recognizing what we can do?
Maya, isn't it true that when the wolf was reintroduced, that unexpected things happened, or we learned a lot? So I think that, you know, as I've just seen you nodding, so I'm going forward. And I think that a lot of times we, you know, we get a hunch, we take a stab at it, and just like with the human body, systems are so complicated and we know so little, and the environment changes. And so this creative collaboration with the bits we know can lead to beneficial things, but I also, you know, it can also lead to further problems. And we humans tend to think that we can fix things and solve them. So yeah, I think it's just much more complicated than we are probably able to control.
Yeah, absolutely. The reintroduction of the wolf was a super critical study because it influenced everything from stream water temperature all the way to forest succession, which means how forests transform over time. So for example, like, meadows will be the space where saplings can then grow because wolves will predate in the meadows because they can see the elk. So then the elk and the deer aren't able to eat the baby sapling trees, which then allows them to grow. Whereas if a predator isn't there, or at least a top predator like a wolf, there is no fear of predation. So it's actually an ecology of fear. That's what the term is. And it's really super fascinating. And also stream water temperature is really critical because that maintains entire fish habitat. So the wolf in and of itself allowed fish that were going essentially extinct in the area to be able to be allowed to be there again. So I'll put that. I have a website I can put in the chat to learn more. There's also tons to read on other resources.
I don't know if anybody is slightly off, but the film The Biggest Little Farm, I think it's called. If anybody's seen that, it talks about this family that they decide to go to practice organic farming, and just the train of things that they had to do in order to practice organic farming. It's a super interesting movie, but I think it kind of speaks about the way these systems, that nature has its own power and its own system, which we have to learn from and work with. I recommend the movie. What?
Can you see the title of that film again?
Yeah, I'm gonna try The Biggest Little Farm. I'm gonna try and put it in the chat right now.
On a totally separate note, I learned about some incredible yarn today. Not the yarn I bought, which is I also love, but it's called Inglenook Fibers, and they're a group of nuns who describe their inspiration as they get color from reading the Bible, like they visualize colors as kind of as they read, and they also are inspired by teacups and the rolling hills. So I just thought I'd share because the fibers are so spectacular. I'll put a link in the chat.
Are those the people in upstate New York?
I believe they are.
Because I think that's where my friend Kitty that I want you to meet brings her wool.
No way.
Familiar. It sounds familiar. Yeah, I'll find out.
Let me see where they are. They're Greek Orthodox nuns.
Maya, what was that about Greek Orthodox nuns?
Just sharing about this fiber that my friend sent me today that is just like totally incredibly beautiful. And they are a group of Greek Orthodox nuns who get color inspiration by reading the Bible, and they're also inspired by teacups and the rolling hills. And I just put the link in the chat.
Is this the monastery that's in Brookline, Massachusetts? Because I've been to that monastery. I'm Greek. I was raised Greek Orthodox. The monastery in Brookline, Massachusetts, is I think it's the Transfiguration Monastery, something like that, and they do a lot of dyeing of wool and weaving. I don't know if that's the one where it's from.
I'm gonna try to find you. Rhinebeck. Is that where you said, Roxanne?
Yeah, that could be. Although Rhinebeck might be a little bit further south. Anyway, we'll put the name of the Okay, you did. Okay, I'll find out from Kitty. Yeah, I think Woodstock might. Yeah, I know where Rhinebeck is because the train. I think it might be a bit further south, but anyway, Kitty wanted to take me to the place where she brings her wool because they're really great. So that'll be nice.
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, you live like 20 minutes from her. So she's got sheep and goats and.
That would be so nice. See.
Well, that was super fun. I'm gonna hop off. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Roxanne. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night. It's been lovely.
Good night, Maria.
Good night, Maria. Good night, everybody. Good night.
Night, Lexa.
Thank you for this. So Maya,
Yeah.
do you have, on another note, as you would say, do you have a playback of the Vandana talk? Is that available anywhere? Do you guys have that? I had scheduled to watch it, but I was not well, so was sleeping. And I would love to see if there's a replay somewhere online. Do I just go to the Eventbrite and ask, or?
I think that, sorry, the Brooklyn Rail puts all of their talks on their website. So if you go to the Brooklyn Rail and look under today,
yeah,
I think they may already have it, but if not, it'll be there tomorrow. But they have all of them.
Oh yeah, I did go earlier today, but yeah, I figured that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How
Thank you.
How was your experience?
It was really amazing. I think for me, what was the most amazing aspect of it was that we had another colleague in the Midwest in Chicago speaking with us. And so having Dr. Shiva in India and Nance in Chicago and me and Millie, who manages like Farm Lab, sort of gave this expanded feel of like Seed Sisters, you know, that it was very, I thought it was a good use of Zoom, you know, when you can bring all that like knowledge and feedback together for an hour. I thought that worked really nicely. And also, I thought that being with Dr. Shiva on Gandhi's birthday was really soulful. I felt her exhaustion and her tiredness. And I felt like, in a funny way, I was glad that we were there for her. It was kind of a weird reversal of like feeling the 6 months of isolation years. Sort of an interesting faux pas there.
Feels like it, yeah.
It wears on all of us in different ways at different times, you know, but it was midnight for her when the talk even started.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was a lot. I felt that. So I've reached out to see if we can talk tomorrow. I just like to unpack it with her because, but thank you so much for asking. She's a beautiful soul.
Oh my God.
To be in the same virtual space with her is like a deep honor.
Yeah, I know. I've had the blessing of being with her and sharing space in lots of different arenas. And
okay.
She is such an amazing warrioress, you know?
She really is. Tell
Yeah.
me, like, where did you last see her?
Last I think was when Nancy Brown hosted a salon. Do you know Nancy in Santa Barbara? She's one of,
No.
there's a group of women in Santa Barbara who are very into regenerative ag and health, health and wellness around environmental health. And so she was there not too long ago. Also Julie, I missed this one, but she was just in the valley just a few months ago before the quarantine hit. Julie Bergman, do you know Julie Bergman and Stuart?
Yes.
Carter? Yeah.
Mhm.
So they hosted her at their home in the valley, which I didn't realize they had moved, so I actually couldn't get there. That was too far. But how I worked with her mostly was around in San Francisco. There's a group out of the Presidio that I'm blanking out right now because I have this head cold, but that where Randy Hayes used to work and the woman Debbie who works with scheduling her stuff in the United States, they were all part of this institute, which I'll send to you. But they used to host her annually every time she'd make a trip over here. And so I saw her a few times there. And then she was at Soil Not Oil. Do you know the Soil Not Oil conference in Richmond?
No.
So it's about, obviously, regenerative soil as compared to oil. And she was a keynote there about 3 years ago. And so a bunch of us came over from Marin when I happened to be there. So she's amazing, amazing, amazing.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
her book, Oneness and the 1%, has just been released in the United States finally. It was blocked for a couple years.
Yeah.
But it's out now, so.
I'm excited about that. Yeah.
I've read it over the weekend, and it's nice because it's like physics for dummies, you know, those books. Like,
yeah.
It's super like paragraph by paragraph, just spelling it out how it works. Of course, I can't remember anything she said by today. But while I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, she's so brilliant.
I know. I use her line, just like the very dumbest down of how climate change and soil are related. It's pretty simple. You take the carbon out of the air and put it into the ground. And there's lots of ways to do that. But we definitely need to be doing that she helped with the Kiss the Ground launch up there. So I'm sure you know folks.
Yeah.
That also, I'm going to see if I can get a link or even a copy of that book for this. I sent you and Maya, I sent it to Maya today, this invite for this regenerative ag webinar. It's about equitable development and regenerative ag and how they're connected, how communities need to build equity where they live for Black and Brown and Indigenous folks.
I didn't get.
You didn't? I sent it to info@. I didn't know if there was a better place.
That's not me. I'd love, please, do you use Instagram?
Yeah, I am on Instagram. You want me to just put a link there? It's an invite only by Kat Taylor. And we've been leading this series around equitable development. This one's on regenerative ag and the essentiality, that's the word, of it for equitable development. And Doria, who runs Urban Tilth in Richmond, which is a regen ag co-op. Conda Mason, who's working with Black farmers, planting regen with Black farmers, and a couple other people. But so let me get your right email. You want me to just post it in your IG? Is that what you're saying?
Here, I'll put both of my.
It's an email invite, and I don't know if the link will open up if it's not an email, but if not, I'll figure it out. I'll just send you the Zoom, but I want to send the description too.
I put my Instagram and my email in the chat. That's how you can reach me.
Okay, good, perfect. I will do that. And it's one of the things Kat is going to be talking about is this thing I mentioned. Oh yeah, that's right. You gave me that before. I apologize. I have an ear infection. That's why I'm kind of out of it. But anyway, this initiative that Kat is working on with the Governor's and First Partners Office called Growing the Table. She's going to be presenting about that. So it'd be cool if you can sit in and listen to that because they're actually doing a pilot in LA in the second round with groups and organizations that are, in fact, we talked to Ron Finley yesterday, Lauren, after that suggestion you made, remember? Oh,
yeah.
He's so wild. He starts out by, here's what I do. What the hell do you want with me? It was beautiful.
Did you mention that I sent you?
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, so we're looking
so
at
funny.
how he's great. Oh my God, what a treasure, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'll make sure you all get all that. It'd be great. It's just a mostly listen in webinar, but there is Q&A at the end, and then it's about building, the whole overview is to build a community of practice around the country around equitable development locations, and how can we as a community support each other with learning exchange, very much similar to what y'all are doing here with practitioners on the ground, but all stakeholders, like people who are scientists, people who are social movement leaders, people who are funders, all coming together, like how do we take responsibility to create this world we want, which is, you know, I'm always telling Kat I want the two of you to meet, because the two of you are like way ahead of your time in different ways, but sort of in similar. When I told her about what this was about, especially the last one, she was like, oh my God, yes, I'd love to meet her. So maybe we can facilitate that at your convenience, Lauren or Maya, either one. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that content with us.
Yeah, I will send it to you.
I just want to say, if you like any events that you hear about or any resources, feel free to email to me. I check my email every morning and I put anything I find that's useful in the daily actions page. So I'd love, like, whatever.
Yes. Did you get that invite from Melina Abdullah about the supporting and nurturing Black women thing they're doing tomorrow at the park? I got it. I'll send it to you. I got it as a text, but it's.
Sorry, I'll clarify that I only post online events. So anything that's in person, I don't put on the actions, because the goal is that.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I got. Okay, I won't send that then.
But I did. Yeah, but that would not be useful.
Got you. Perfect. That's good to know. All right, I'll let you all go into your evening. I did request another embroidery kit because Marisa, my niece, wants to start joining us.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we'll get it to you next week.
Yeah, she's over here. She's eating ice cream, but
Hi. What kind of ice cream are you eating? Ooh, that sounds good. Maya, that ice cream that you sent me wasn't the ice cream you sent me.
Oh.
It turned out to be sent by someone else from Seattle. I didn't even see the note. I just assumed it was yours.
Oh.
So yours hasn't come yet.
Okay. All right, I'll look into that.
She goes by Wolf Girl. I put that in the chat, but Marisa goes by Wolf Girl, and she's totally. I'll have to send you a shot of this.
Wolf Girl, that's so cool. Hi, Wolf Girl.
We were in New Mexico in Santa Fe
a
year or so ago, and a friend of ours that I met from Bioneers is shepherding a pack of 23 wolves that she's been taking care of them. And one of them, whose name's Blue Jesus, literally is a blue wolf, is like very friendly. And so there's all these pictures of Marisa and Blue Jesus, but I've been helping connect her to folks where she needs to move that pack to Colorado, out of New Mexico. So
wow,
that's an amazing learning. Yeah.
That's amazing. What's that painting on your wall?
That one by Marisa. Marisa
really?
did that. That's her art. Yeah, she's done.
Well, right when you said Blue Jesus, I saw that blue, and I was like, wow.
She's very good at painting free watercolors. You know, freehand watercolors. We have like amazing. She gives them for gifts. They're gorgeous.
Wow. Well, so nice to meet you, Wolf Girl.
I didn't catch the ice cream flavor.
We've actually been
Oreos.
We went to Metabolic together one time when you were first doing before not a corn. Oh no, she was at Strawberry Flag. Somebody ate strawberries at Strawberry Flag. So when we first came, we used to live in.
When you were little, what, like this big?
Well, she was where were you? Yeah, she was in middle school maybe or.
Oh, okay.
But we lived in Santa Monica then, so we came over to that. I was blown away. It was amazing. That's
Oh.
I thought, God, the way that you bring.
Well, you're giving me lots of. I'm being loved on, and you don't know if you know, but tomorrow's my birthday. So this was like a really nice prequel to my birthday. Is to get all of this strokes and positive attention, and that my life has touched your life, and I really appreciate it.
So much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Really, you're really a genius of our time. Both
Oh
of you.
my God, thank you.
No, I'm serious. The way that you're an alchemist and bringing these things together to like go in deep and have people feel, see, sense the realities of what's happening, it's really an art and a gift.
Oh my God, you're such an angel. Honestly, this could not have been a better butterfly kiss of an ease into your birthday day. Thank you so much. Really, I super appreciate it.
Enjoy, celebrate. We're celebrating you over here.
Thank you. Enjoy that Oreo ice cream. I'm going to go eat my weird cookie dough vegan ice cream.
Yeah, I got some of that actually. I just had that.
It's really weird. It's like eating, like, do you remember that shaved ice cream that they were selling in Little Tokyo that Morgan liked so much, Maya? It was like little tiny chips of frozen ice cream. But when you would eat it, it would be like almost like I imagine sucking on dry ice. Like you could taste the creaminess, but it wasn't really moist. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Anyway, the vegan ice cream has that texture. Like it's creamy, but not milky. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And the cookie dough one is just basically cookie dough mixed with coconut milk and frozen. So
yeah. I think I had that, and I like the Bliss. Do you ever eat Bliss? That,
I love coconut
that's
Bliss.
like the vegan choice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's like, oh my God.
I agree. I think that's way better.
With almond chocolate bars. It's like, how do you just like coconut almond chocolate
I don't know.
bar with like really good
It's
quality
delicious.
chocolate. So good.
Oh, that sounds good. Yum. This is getting better by the minute.
I just need candles and balloons. We'll wish that on you.
I'm going to have my first massage in 6 months.
Oh, good for you.
You didn't have a massage in 6 months?
I haven't had a massage since COVID started.
That'll be my goal too.
I have, that's been a big transition. I'm even wondering what it's going to be like because luckily it's the same practitioner I've always worked with, and we're going to do it outside, and she wears a mask, and but still, like, that's what's my birthday treat to me.
That sounds so nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's going to be Sunday evening. And then Zenji's coming over with Aaron.
Wow. I'm seeing Kike.
I know. He's taking something for you from me.
Really?
I'm gonna see him tomorrow. He's coming to my Millie and me and Caroline are having a banana split party on the loading dock.
I love
Don't worry, it's totally gross.
What do you mean?
What?
Good to have whatever you want on your birthday.
But you can zoom in if you want.
Yes, please.
That'll be at 6 to 7 our time tomorrow.
Okay, I will be there.
Okay, cool.
Why is it gross?
Oh, because like, did you see that picture I put on Instagram like last week with Fausto handing me the banana split?
Yes.
So first of all, it's like a lot. So right away, it's kind of overwhelming because it's like a triple portion. And then the ice cream is like, I don't really like ice cream. So I think that's part of it. Like I want to like ice cream, but I really don't. Like I'm still trying to like ice cream because I know it's this magical thing. But anyway, so having a lot of not very good pistachio ice cream is not excellent for me. And then there's that like whipped cream that's not real whipped cream that he puts on top of that. And then he puts hot chocolate that's not real chocolate on top of that. And then he puts Oreo cookies all throughout it. And then there's a frozen banana cut on either side.
Okay.
And it's so overwhelming. Last week I had one bite, now it's sitting in the freezer downstairs, like as a sort of object, but it's so at the same time over the top fantastic. And he loves to make them, that we decided to have a banana split birthday party for 3 of us tomorrow. And we probably each invited a few friends. So Fausto's going to come and make banana splits in his truck. I was considering bringing my own ice cream. If Maya's ice cream comes tomorrow, I'll bring that. But otherwise, I don't want him to feel like I don't like his ice cream.
Yeah. I'll check in on the ice cream front. I don't know what's going on, but I definitely did not order you a vegan.
No, that was from this guy that came from Seattle to help his mom move. And he stayed at Christine and Margaret's place, and he wanted to say thank you. So he sent me Seattle ice cream, but it was so weird because I was expecting your ice cream. So I didn't even carefully read the card. And then later that night, I was going to dip into the ice cream and savor the card. And I opened it up and it was not from you. And I'd already told you that I got your ice cream.
It's my pseudonym.
Scully? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I dropped a bunch of stitches on this knitting, and I've been trying to get it back, and it's really hard.
I'm going to let you all go.
All right, bye. Nice to talk to you.
What was the news that came in that you were deciding whether or not to share?
Ryan, do you want to take
I was ever so curious.
Kellyanne Conway has coronavirus. One of Trump's top aides.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of them, the way they've been hugging and kissing each other.
No, just another one.
A friend of mine, I have to say, this will be the closing note. A friend of mine that I work with lives in London, so she was ahead of the news. So when I woke up, there was this little picture of the teas, 45 and spouse. And she said, I never wish poorly on anyone, but I have to say this made me laugh. I'm like,
I know, it's terrible. Terrible. I don't want anybody to suffer, but at the same time, if it had to be any poetic justice in the world whatsoever, this is it.
That's the exact words I thought of. Yeah.
I don't feel bad at all. I want him to suffer a lot. I would like
the most amazing thing is, what is it going to do to everyone who's been around them they literally hugging and kiss each other with joy from thinking they're nominating a new justice, right? What about her, who was right next to him as he was spitting?
Well, she had coronavirus. The justice had coronavirus in the summer.
Yeah.
So she's probably got the antibodies.
Yeah, but that's not really.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
That's kind of debunked now, right? That the antibodies. No.
I think that we haven't pushed off the shore of COVID long enough to know about how long. But people are saying that they can say that the antibodies do protect you for at least 3 months.
Okay.
But I mean, they know so little about this illness that I'm not even,
Yeah.
It's hard to know what, I do know that Trump is getting some kind of special treatment right now, so that's not available to anybody else.
Exactly. And he's not well. He's not a very
understatement of our lifetime. Yeah. He's not well in so many ways. We cannot count them. Yeah. Thanks, Maya. Okay. On that note, it's fun being with you all. I'm going to let you go. Have a happy birthday, Lauren. And I'm going to send you that invite right now, Maya, so you have it in your box, okay?
Okay.
For Thursday at 2:30 Pacific.
Okay.
5:30 your time, Maya. Okay? Cool. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Bye, Vicki.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night. Well,
How did that feel?
are you talking to Vicky?
Well, I was asking you, but I'd also like to hear from Vicky too, if she wants to share.
Oh, I've just been sitting here working on, oh, you can see it.
Oh, wow. I can't really see what it is too well, but is it?
It's the beginning of an avocado.
Oh, cool. With the light coming through the back, and what I'm seeing is a horse and a fairy tale with a leaf, a giant fern. So
well,
excellent.
It'll be better to find later.
Yeah.
So I spent the other two I started.
I really enjoyed it, Maya. I thought that that it was great. I thought it was, the conversation was way better than I expected.
Yeah.
There's a lot of knowledge here that's already coming, and it's a lot of us, you know, the fires are very real. So I think it's really good to be providing that format for people to talk about it, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that we should talk next week about, if you want to talk about it, adding a couple of new guidelines to the guidelines, you know, re-looking at the guidelines, and also thinking about whether you imagine having breakout rooms so that people who have a lot to say but can maybe remove themselves. I just don't like know how to deal with this. I don't have an instinct yet. I think I'd love to hear what you guys have to think about how to run the conversation this time.
Yeah, it's like a completely different thing.
Yeah.
Like
it felt like the beginning felt very familiar, right? Like I didn't feel like there was that big of a transition between like reading the abolitionist material or reading the article, and I found that seeing a video was also completely fine. But then when we got into the conversation, I really thought, wow, this is like really different. Like this is
exactly know what it is, but it's just different.
Yeah.
I think that part of it is that a lot more people have more personal knowledge and experience with this subject. And I think breakout rooms sound great. And I also want to say, Mom, to answer your question about if I'd like to discuss guidelines, I think what would be super helpful is if you ruminate. It seems like you have an idea of what you'd like there to be. And I'm totally open to whatever you.
Okay. I'll have a think about it. I like the idea of really encouraging people to connect to their personal experiences with the material, so that it's a safe place to not be intellectual, even though some of the material we'll be reading is intellectual. Like I feel like I don't know how to say it exactly, but I think that would be an interesting.
I think maybe that you might be remembering that was in the last thing, because I actually took that out of this, like, because the last readings I asked for people to have to not be emotional, essentially, to have reflection.
Right.
Reading itself.
Right. You were separating sentiment from educated knowledge, and that we had to move from sentiment into actually knowing what we're talking about.
And that both are important, but it's important that we move forward with our knowledge based off of what we learn and is like factual. Whereas I think in this case, the reason I took that out is I totally agree. This is a really emotional topic, and I think this is something that we should be exploring. So that is not in the guidelines anymore, like, but it is. I think it would be helpful to say, like, I don't know if that's necessarily a community guideline, more so as like a encouragement, because, or it could be like, we accept that we will hold space for people to speak from their heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something simple like that.
I think one of the things that Newton likes to talk about that could stand in is that there's an importance in developing like our empathy for the forest, and that one of
watching Newton has a piece about this, and we're going to be watching it too.
Yeah. But I mean, one of the things that he would say perhaps would be that it's important if people have empathetic stories about these readings, you know, that can widen our ability to communicate from an empathy perspective, that would be encouraged.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
like, I just keep losing more stitches. I think I might need to just restart. Super bizarre. The thing that I want to keep and remind ourselves to keep is like, I think there is an aspect of like the conversational loop that we can get into that might create it might create like a core group of people who discuss together and then leave out others. Like it might become more of a lecture style thing.
That's why, yeah.
It's okay. I just think it's something we should discuss.
I think that might be like a place for the breakout rooms, you know, because if people knew that there was a breakout room that was going to go like deeper into something,
yeah,
they could come in and go back. Like the breakout room allows you to kind of like go in for a while and then kind of go back to the general conversation.
Totally.
And also if there were small, like for example, I would be happy to host a breakout room with Margaret on something, you know, or we could both do different breakout rooms.
Yeah.
I also thought in this case that it might be good to see if it might be a good idea to have somebody like Bees participate in this to kind of collect the data that was coming up.
Yeah.
Or maybe get it afterwards, because the Zoom recordings, I mean, I think if we got out of it some kind of spreadsheet with a lot of the resources that come out of these that became a resource that would go on our website.
I don't know if Bees needs to participate. I don't just.
She doesn't, yeah.
Yes, that would be great if she participated. But what would be even greater is if we do ask that she receives the chat every week and takes the resources out of the chat and put a standing list together.
Okay, I agree. I think that would be a really good addition, because like at the end, this will live on our website as a resource, right? Potentially. Yeah, I loved it. I'm super, super, super excited that these are going on, and you're an awesome convener of these things, and I hope you're enjoying it.
Yes, I really am.
I love the way your mind works, and I couldn't imagine doing this without you. So thank you for bringing that to the practice.
Thanks, Mom. I feel really excited about this syllabus, and I'm really grateful that you came forward with this idea, because it's something I want to learn more about, and I learned more about just putting the syllabus together, but I also can't wait to like learn even more from everyone.
And I also think that one of the things that would be good to have in the chat bar, or at least discuss afterwards, are certain questions that came up that wouldn't be bad to pursue the answers to. Like, I thought that question about native versus non-native plants requires a bit more fleshing out, you know? Then I could easily answer, but that like then mushroomed into this other question about stewardship of the land with natives versus non-natives, which is a slightly different but adjacent question. And I think having these lists of questions that are coming up that we don't necessarily know the answer to would be really helpful and valuable.
What I think could also be really helpful is if we come up with, like, for example, if someone asks a question like the native plant question, and I can share what I've studied, and I'm not an expert, but I can share my perspective and what I know, and then what we can say afterwards is, would you like to take this homework and come back next week with some research to share with us?
That's
Like,
a good
are
idea.
you interested in researching this and coming back with that knowledge? Or even just sharing any texts that you find for us to read in our own lives.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's interesting that twice today I heard about braiding sweetgrass. That must be a very good book. Have you read it?
I've read pieces of it. I just actually
beautiful too.
I got it today. I was recommended it by Chelsea Gaki. How do you say her last name?
I think, yeah. I think it might be Gake.
Gake. And then Kelly put Braiding Sweetgrass in the recommended books that she had compiled, but I didn't actually use Braided Sweetgrass directly in the syllabus, but I did use Robin Wall Kimmerer twice in other essays that she's written that are more direct. Braiding Sweetgrass is like a more like her perspective, like very personal, which I think is super important, but I just wanted some more. She writes a lot about this. Anyway, I think it's definitely worth buying, and she's an awesome native author who has a lot of knowledge to share.
I'll definitely get that, and I'm trying to support a local bookstore that's struggling too, so I'll see if I can order. Romans in Pasadena. I put it on my social media because it's one of those, like, you know, good community bookstores.
Yeah, I thought tonight was really great, and I totally am open to changing the guidelines. I'm also open to considering, like, we could even take out the idea that we have to share the space equally. It's just more that, like,
well, let's think about it, because I didn't, it's a very different situation, you know. I also wanted to say, I can't believe how good everybody has gotten at embroidery and how important that is to the whole project, right? And like, that was a surprise for me tonight, you know, because I don't love embroidery. So I set myself up to do clay work. And now, like, just out of sheer competition, I'm going to start, I'm going to do competitive embroidery. I like wanted to do everybody else's stitches, you know, and
stitch, I found it on YouTube.
I was like, oh, slam dunk. I'm going to do the Maria Callas's white stitching on a bumblebee.
Oh yeah, great idea. Look at this.
Competitive embroidery.
That sounds great.
I think we should, like, hold up all the ones and have all, like, vote. Like, who likes the...
Like this. Cheer. Everyone cheer out loud. You like this.
The one who wins is going to be our Christmas stamp this year. Holiday stamp for the studio. We're going to make a stamp out of it.
Are you actually? Or are you kidding?
No, I want to make a holiday stamp out of one of them. So I was like, send around to vote.
I really like the idea of these as stamps. How do you make
Yes. You just order them digitally.
Are you talking about like a stamp or a stamp?
Postage stamp. Because we have our calendar, our abolitionist reading calendar coming out.
We're going to have to do Fires of the West calendar too.
I know, but what people are getting for the holidays are the abolitionist reading calendar. So to have the native plant stamp on it kind of brings the whole object.
Cool.
That's
together.
really cool.
Are you gonna put pictures?
But I
of-
don't know which one to do. That's why I thought we could do competitive embroidery. We can like send it out for a vote like we did with the name of What the Helado.
Yeah. We could totally have a day where we vote. I feel like people will. And you can just send your feedback in without it being public. Like booing sections if you dissent. Like
you could have like
one.
Everyone's stupid.
Go to hell! I worked so hard on mine.
This one got me through it really hard.
Maybe we have to do that. Well,
Yeah.
That'd be great t-shirts too.
They would. They could easily be turned into screens for the print studio.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
But they're so beautiful in real life. They're like, they carry all that, you know, touchiness in it, which makes it really special document of this moment in time, you know, that we're all living through.
I know.
It just keeps on getting crazier and crazier.
I'm just so happy. My friend Anna today, I so happy about it, and she was like, I will never wish anyone, you know, like I will never want anyone to get the coronavirus. And I was like, wow, you're a really good person. That's so admirable. Ways that he can die right now, and it brings me joy.
I just can't believe though that it's like the whole inner circle of the Trump like establishment. Like, I mean,
what they expect.
It's
Like,
se-
what do they expect?
you can't like, you could not have scripted something like this.
Like 32 days before the election.
What is wrong with them?
It seems like it's coming back to last Saturday is the day that they're all.
What happened on Saturday? Was that the Rose Garden party for Amy Barrett?
Yeah, three
Somebody,
journalists, and then 2 more senators came out, and now Kellyanne Conway, and yeah. I'm just gonna say, I'm not gonna say anything other than William Barr hangs out with this crowd a lot, which would be interesting.
It's like the mean people, you know. It's I don't know. It's not so bad.
But what's so clear is like we're living through a massive thing right now.
Yeah.
And we already were, but I mean, like, this is just like, I don't even.
Crazy.
It's next.
Somebody was saying like Justice Ginsburg just won her first case with God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Quoting that. It's so remarkable. The irony is just so like.
Yeah, really, it's so shocking, and his arrogance and just sheer stupidity.
Yeah.
It's just like all of us who are taking good care now know what it's not that hard, right? You get into a routine and you just know what has to be done, right?
Yeah.
If you have the privilege to do that, right?
Yeah.
If you have the privilege to do that, but to just go like that to all of that because you somehow think it's bullshit or whatever
Infringing on your freedom
is so stupid. And like now, I mean, it's like, oh God, it's such a mess.
echelons of our government are now, you know, they have
Out.
and they're out, and Trump is literally in the hospital right now.
by his face.
In the hospital.
Bring it on, baby.
If you watch the
I
news,
wish I was his nurse.
it says Trump is hospitalized. You watch MSNBC right now, which is like literally just 2 days ago is nuts. But like now, yeah, Trump's hospitalized. It's 2020.
But it's
So for all we know, we don't know who gave it to who. Like, it's not necessarily that Hope Hicks gave it to the president.
No, because everyone was at this thing on Saturday. No one really knows.
They all
So that
make out together all the time. It's like, what
Yeah.
do they expect?
Yeah, they shake hands. They use the same railings. No one wears face mask. It's basically, it's nuts.
Well, I guess that's all over now.
Well, it's proving a point that this is real. This is a real thing.
It's not a hoax.
It's not a hoax, and they know that, and that's what's so evil. It's like they have on their hands hundreds of thousands of people's lives.
Yeah.
Who've died.
That's going to be the name of Rich's show at Mass Mocha, by the way.
What?
This is not a hoax.
That's a great title.
That's a really good title.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. It's weird. I just want to say one more thing. Yesterday, I had a feeling in the evening. I was like, in my head, I had a feeling that something big was going to happen. That like my phone would get an alert and it would be big. I just feel.
What time was it when you found out?
Yeah.
Like 8 o'clock?
Well, it was released that he had confirmed coronavirus at like 1:30 in the morning here.
And we're normally like fast asleep by that point, but I was having intense anxiety and got up to watch Step Brothers. Do you remember that movie?
And I was watching the news and they said it, but I had a feeling about it before we went to bed because it was so weird how they're handling it. I was like, yeah, he has coronavirus. So it's just really, really strange.
It seems more and more like this. Like, I know that people were saying, like, is he doing this intentionally? But if everyone has it, I don't think this is intentional.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's intentional, because what I do think is like how he was yelling at Biden,
Yeah.
how much spittle would have been in the air.
Yeah. He was talking away, but still.
But I mean, we'll have to see what happens because Biden's people were there as well.
Yeah.
So I think they have to behave like he has to quarantine now, even though he's tested negative. Like,
Yeah.
he was literally yelling at, like, spewing.
Yeah, I know, and he probably was pre-symptomatic.
And did you read he didn't take a COVID test? Like, the regulations of the debate were that you had to, and he came so late that he couldn't do it?
Saw that, and
That's criminal.
it's insane. And something that's like kind of scary is Kellyanne Conway said that she was tested a few times recently, like within the past couple days, and everything was negative. And then today, she has a cough and maybe a low-grade fever, and she's positive now. So it's like these people that have negative tests, Joe Biden included, and Jill Biden, you don't know. Like that can switch. So it's really scary.
Then what happens? Like, I mean,
It's chaos.
This is a completely, like, I have no idea how this is all going to work itself out.
Yeah, I hope that this is the season finale of 2020. And there isn't anything bigger than this, but I feel like that's not reality.
No, neither.
It's not real. So,
And also, we don't know if Pence is going to get it.
Exactly.
Well, he should.
But Pence must have been at that party, right?
He was at that party, I
They
think.
were all making out, I'm sure.
But also they, they say that even though he's tested negative, like Kellyanne Conway, in 2 days he could be positive too.
Exactly. So, I think that, Jared Kushner, Jared Kushner was walking right next to Hope Hicks.
Yeah.
And, I, who knows? He'd be another interesting person to come down with it.
I'd be personally happy about that one.
Yeah, that would be my personal Jared.
Jared.
My personal I think one of the most interesting one would be what's his name? Steven something.
Mnuchin?
No. He's like in charge of Trump's immigration reform.
I hope well, no, but then never mind. I take that back.
All right. I got to go home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maya, you look so pretty. Yeah. You look like you're going out.
Well, I am not. Not going out.
Well, you look like you are, which is really nice. Hey, you want to know something really nice? Another nice thing that happened to me for my birthday is that I hung Sharon and my paintings in here for the Dr. Shiva talk, and the one curator that Sharon and I both know came to the reading tonight, which is Maya's old friend's mom, Patricia Lee Watts.
Nice.
And Patricia Watts, her son went to school with you in Topanga. She runs something called an eco art space now in New Mexico.
Yeah.
And anyway, like I got to have in the chat bar, she was like, "Are those your paintings?" And I was like, "Well, it's funny you should mention it because this is my collective work with Sharon, who's like, she stays with Sharon when she's in LA."
No way.
And so she really liked them. And now I said, well, sometimes Sharon and you and me should Zoom and we can, because she wanted to know about the process, of making them.
That's
so
so
cool.
They look
But I mean,
like this, the visual is very, it's effective.
It's so nice to be able to look at these works, but also share them without it being like a walkthrough or anything, but just like they feel really there. It's not just like a virtual screen, like they're real things and I can walk back there. And I love the way the light makes the yellow bounce out. Like if you turn the light down, it's a totally different thing. So just seeing them on a white wall,
Feel very 3D, even though I know they're not. I know that's kind of what Sharon is so good at, is she does that shading almost. But
yeah,
that comes across it feels both, you can see both of you guys very intensely. Your form of painting comes out.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So it's really, that was also just nice to kind of have a little unintended opening today with the one curator that Sharon and I actually know.
Yeah.
Who both,
That's super sweet.
Yeah, it was a nice moment. So thank you guys for making that happen.
Yeah.
Vicki, good to see you.
You too. Have a good weekend. Have a good night.
Have a good weekend. I hope you enjoyed the parade yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Glad you could make it.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing the link when you're ready to send it out. That'll be exciting.
Oh yeah, we'll send it next week for sure.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Great talking to you. Bye.
Bye. You too.